Helps if you turn the mic on. Good afternoon. Welcome back to the Workday recap here on the Dev Mentor Dave channel. Is it called a channel on Twitch? I don't know. Somebody let me know. Jump in the chat. Let me know if Twitch calls these channels. Or just a stream. I don't know. Should I just say the Dev Mentor Dave stream? I don't know. Whatever it is. Welcome back to the Workday recap, where we meet here every day at every Monday through Friday, generally at 4 p.m. And for about half an hour, talk about things that happen in my day, things that happen in your day, or just crazy stuff we found on LinkedIn, or things that we want to mock or argue about, or all kinds of things. So there's really not always a set agenda. And oftentimes it's pulled from my day, conversations that I've had with coworkers and things like that. Or if you've got a question, certainly jump in the chat, leave your question. If you have a question and you're watching this later on YouTube, leave a comment below and I will look at that and I will either answer the comment there on YouTube or I'll bring it into the next live stream that we have. If it's on a Friday, I'll probably do it on a Monday because we do have a live stream on Saturday at 10 a.m. for 2 hours, but it's more focused on kind of a different thing content there on our Saturday morning. So a little bit different there, but I'll probably answer it on Monday and try to answer those in the comments as well. So feel free to leave a comment if you're watching on YouTube later on. But if you're watching live and if you're available, if you're watching on YouTube and you're available on Monday through Friday at 4 p.m. Central Time, jump on and jump in the chat and say hello. Just like Dan did, he's here saying hello and he's telling me that they are channels. Okay, good. So I'm not completely stupid when I say the Dev Mentor Dave channel here on Twitch. So that's good to know. At least it makes me feel a little bit better. Thanks, Dan. Even if you're lying to me, it still makes me feel better, and that's really what's important, right? So I put a post up on LinkedIn today, and it's a lot of just kind of random thoughts around the fact that as of today, I have been at my current employer for 3 years. And oh, it says I've followed channels, so that makes sense. So 3 years. Thank you, Dan, for the congratulations. 3 years at my current job, not necessarily current position. I've changed positions in the company in that time, but that is the longest time that I have been at a single employer since I started back in 2011. That's starting full time, working both freelance and jumping into other things. Obviously, I'd been writing code long before that, but actually doing it as a job full time, starting in 2011, if I remember correctly. I think so. So it's that's kind of a weird thing, and so I just talked a little bit about the reality of my career versus other careers, and I've talked about that here on the channel before, so I'm not going to dive too deeply into that. But as I was thinking about that reality and thinking about kind of my history, I typically would call myself a self-taught dev. I didn't go to college for programming. I didn't go to a boot camp or anything like that. I had one semester in high school in 1999 where I learned basic HTML, mostly starting in Notepad and a little bit of front page. If you happen to be familiar with those with those tools. Sorry, work notifications. So if you happen to be familiar with those tools, you'll recognize how old that is. And so we learned basic HTML, front page. Yeah, exactly, Dan. Takes you way back. But we just learned the very basic HTML. It would have been HTML4, I believe, at the time. I don't know, maybe earlier than that. I don't think I even knew what the number was. I just knew it was basic HTML. And so I learned that my senior year of high school. Obviously didn't go to school for that. But I always kind of tinkered around with it. And so outside of that, really, in YouTube tutorials, and a lot of Stack Overflow and documentation pages. So I would call myself generally a self-taught dev. And, just thinking about my career over the past few years and even beyond that, um, looking back on a lot of different things, a lot of times I think, especially, um, well, I think this is a problem for all devs, right? This is a problem for all devs, but it kind of depends on how it plays out is kind of dependent upon how you got into development. For somebody who went to college, this can be an issue in some different ways. For somebody who is more self-taught like me, might be an issue in other ways. But I was just thinking about even myself. I feel like I'm a pretty decent person, as much as one can be, especially from my theological perspectives. We won't go into that at the moment, but so I feel like I'm a pretty nice person to other people that I work with and things like that. But at the end of the day, I'm still human, and I still deal with this too, and that issue really is pride. And there are certain aspects of this concept of pride that, taking pride in your work, things like that, that we kind of use in a positive way. But pride is a very active, bad stimulator in the development world, to be quite frank with you. We all struggle with it, to be honest, in one degree or another. But from my perspective, especially as a self-taught dev, it can be really easy to fall into some prideful ways of thinking. And so, as I was thinking about my journey so far to this point, and um, just kind of taking some time to look back, I've really had a lot of reflection today, and I found myself, the more that I've been reflecting, becoming more and more thankful for a lot of different things. I've probably bugged a few people too much today in giving some statements of gratitude and stuff like that. But I think that's really the key to solving the problem of pride. So I wrote down a few notes that I want to kind of go through today. If anybody else has any questions or anything that you would like to add to the conversation, jump into the chat and join in, of course. But I just want to throw out some things that this can look like, right? What does this look like, and how can it be a problem in your life as a developer, in the way that you interact with other people as a developer, and how we can maybe take some steps to fight against that, if you're willing to. I'll be honest with you. I have worked with developers from the whole gamut of extremely proud and and everybody around them would agree with that assessment, to extremely humble, and everything in between. I would probably place myself somewhere in between there, at least in my mind. Hopefully the things that come out are much more humble than how I often think about myself and think about other people, unfortunately. But if we're not careful, those things will come out in the way that we act and interact with people. And one of the important things about being a part of a team, especially as a developer, is being able to work with others well. And I think pride is probably the biggest thing that hurts those types of interactions within a team. And so I want to talk a little bit about today about how that kind of plays out, and maybe some things that we can do to avoid that. And I'm going to probably title the video something about self-made devs or something, but this really can apply to any developer, because once you begin to feel confident in your skills and abilities, you begin to take on this some of these attributes of pride. Even if you're trying to be careful, I think they can kind of sneak in sometimes without thinking. Obviously, probably the first way of doing that is this idea of feeling superior. Now, if you're a junior developer, you might be thinking right now, I don't think I'll ever feel superior to anybody, because you're just trying to get started. You're just working through a lot of stuff and learning a lot of stuff. But there's going to come a point in time where you'll probably be working with other people who will know more than you. I actually had one of my coworkers today was praising another coworker because they were able to help them out. And one of the things that he said was he really appreciates being able to work in an environment where other people know as much or more than he does, or just have more knowledge of other areas to where we can help each other out. And so if you can get into an environment like that, that is really awesome, because especially if when you see other people presenting it in that way, in that format, it really helps you to kind of keep some of your own feelings in check. But we can have this tendency to feel like we're superior than other people, whether we have a more knowledge about something, or whether we have a way that we think is the best way to do something. But whether it is the best way or not, we find it's faster for us to do something a certain way, and so we can begin to get an air of superiority, and begin to think that other people need to follow our processes, right? And so and so I think it's important for us to, sorry, we got a post from rar skills 2022. All right. And thanks for the follow, rar skills. Might just say skills to make it easier. Thanks for the follow, skills. I appreciate it. I don't know what he says. I hit the follow for you to help you hitting that 10 followers. Is there something significant about 10 followers? See how little I've actually learned about about Twitch. There's probably something to that. I don't know what it is. But thanks, skills. Thanks for jumping in. So anyways, getting back to the superiority thing, right? I've worked with other developers who, thought that they had set the moon. And part of the problem is a lot of times they get a lot of praise and accolades from upper management and things like that. And so it's easy for them to begin to think that they're more, right? And even me, like I can oftentimes find myself getting impatient with somebody, thinking that, what, I'll do it, because if I don't do it, it won't be done right. Kind of this perfectionism comes out a little bit too in pride. If they're not good enough, it's not going to be done right if I let them do it. I'll just do it. I'll be faster, or I'll do it better, or whatever that is. And especially as a leader, that really can hurt relationships, especially if that comes out in the way that you talk. But even just as coworkers, that can really build a wall between coworkers, and you don't end up working well together from that point on, because you've got this attitude that nobody can do it as well as you. And also that can kind of lead to burnout too, where you think you've got to do everything because nobody else can do it the way you can do it. And so now you end up doing all this extra work that maybe you should have let other people do. And so you start to begin to get burned out at your job as well. So one of the things that I recommend is just always taking some time. Maybe it's once a week, maybe once a day, I don't know. But I think once a week, once a month, really taking some time to just stop and reconsider how you got to where you are. I think this is good for junior developers, especially because it helps them remind themselves that there is progress, but also it should give us some time to reflect and think about where we used to be, where we are now, and how we got there. And if we're honest with ourselves, a lot of times the way that we got there is through the help of somebody else, whether that's a mentor, whether that's a coworker, whether that's just a YouTuber, right? Or a Twitch streamer, or whatever. There's somebody in your life probably that came alongside and helped you go from what you were as a developer before, whether that was nothing, or a very junior developer, or just not knowing anything about this language or whatever, and now you're very good at it, right? And I think it's good for us to go back and remember, and maybe even send a Slack message, or maybe send an email, or a LinkedIn DM or something like that, and take the time and actually thank them. That anytime you begin to express gratitude, it has this really cool effect of quelling your own pride inside, and that those acts of gratitude change the way that you view other people. When you begin to think highly of other people and in gratitude, that changes the way that you think about them, and you don't think about them as annoying or slow or inefficient, or all these other things that our pride likes to think about other people and compare ourselves to other people. Instead, we begin to think of them more as a team member, more as a coworker, and somebody who we're working together with on a project or to help the company succeed, right? And so there's those little acts of gratitude are really, really important. But we've got to also recognize those areas where we're beginning to act a little prideful, where we, especially for us, I feel like especially for us as self-made devs, so to speak, those who have trained ourselves, we have the tendency to to think more highly of ourselves even than people who have degrees and things like that. I've said for years, most of my best developers were not the developers with CS degrees. They were the ones who were self-taught. And I think there is a lot of truth to that, but I think there can also begin to rise a lot of pride in that as well, because I put myself in that category. So when I say that, I'm also saying that, well, of course, I'm a great developer too, which if you've ever been on the Saturday live streams watching me write code, you would highly disagree with that statement. Most likely. Which that's Saturdays at 10 a.m. in case anybody's missed the earlier part. So the reality is I'm not a perfect dev at all. Absolutely. Um, Dan says self-taught devs unite. I won't read the rest of it because he's just buttering me up. All right. So another way that this does present itself, and you wouldn't necessarily think about this as pride, but this idea of imposter syndrome, right? This fear of looking incompetent, fear of that you don't really belong. At the end of the day, really, that's really just kind of pride. It's saying, I can't admit that I don't know something because it takes my value down, right? It's basically saying I don't want to see my value go down. It's important to me. And I think we need to be okay with that. We need to be okay with not knowing something. This goes back to the illustration I always use about that interview that we used to do, or that we did before years ago, where they came in and they knew something about everything, right? They may not have used that technology, but they knew about it. They had an understanding about it, and I would much rather hear someone say, "I've never used that before, but I'd be happy to learn," than hear somebody give me some really vague information that they looked up on ChatGPT or something like that before the interview, right? And we do that because we don't want to look bad. We don't want to look like we're incompetent. We don't want to look like we don't know what we're doing. And that's the fear that's behind imposter syndrome as well. So one of the things that I would remind you of, if you're feeling imposter syndrome, recognize that part of that might just be your own pride saying, I don't want others to look at me poorly. And if that is the case, then just recognize that it's okay to be where you're at. As long as you're growing, as long as you're getting better over time, it's okay to just be a junior dev right now. And maybe that's been 3 years because, excuse me, maybe that's been 3 years because you've spent only half time working on it. You couldn't fully devote yourself to it. That's okay. It's not a big deal. Who cares, right? Who cares what other people really think at the end of the day? There's so many so much diversity in the dev world. You are probably better than somebody else, and there's probably 100,000 people better than you. I think about even in my job, my title is a director of engineering, and I many days wonder if that is a very apt title for me. At the end of the day, it's what I'm doing. I'm directing engineering, but that just sounds much more important than I feel like I deserve. Right. And so then that sometimes will determine how I act. Maybe I begin to act more assertive, which isn't necessarily wrong, but can lead to some more prideful interactions and things like that, all because I'm trying to live up to what in my mind my title says that I should be. So I think we need to be careful about pride causing us to think differently about where we're at in our journey, and just accept where we're at in our journey. It's okay to be where we are. Um, and where you are may feel like you don't deserve to be there. There's some of that imposter syndrome. Don't allow that feeling to then make you act out of character, to make you act out of pride towards other people in order to feel like you deserve to be where you are. Just accept where you are and do your best to grow into that in the future. I think another way that pride can really come out in the development world is this kind of feeling of, if you're not in our club, then you're dumb or you're lesser, right? And this is really interesting because it kind of plays itself out in the different tech stacks, right? So in our uh, industry, not industry, at my job, we have people who are Laravel developers, and that's kind of that tech stack. We typically pair that with Vue or React. And then we have people who are like .NET developers. We got a couple that are Go developers. So we have a wide range of skill sets, but there kind of is this like natural tribalism around like the Laravel camp versus the .NET camp versus the Go camp. Lots of different camps that you could create, and even sub camps within those. You've got Vue versus React, and then some just blade templating, and all these different ways that we can begin to kind of segregate ourselves off from one another. And one of the things that I love about the company that I work for is we don't really have that. We might joke about it once in a while, just for fun, but we actually have devs that'll transition between C# and Laravel, and then we've got one dev that's gone from C# to Laravel back to C#, and now they're doing Go. So like we encourage everybody to learn other things if they're interested in them, and we try to find the best fit for everybody as often as we can within the organization on the projects that we're working on. So when we say that we're agnostic about code, we're pretty agnostic, not just in the projects that we'll take, but even internally, we don't have a whole lot of tribalism going on. But that is something that's oddly normal in the world of developers, in this industry, right? We get very very quick to become tribal and act like, hey, if you're not using this, then you're just not as smart. You're not as cool, right? If you're not using this technology. Dan chimed in. Yeah, I find that bizarre. Maybe I'm too dumb to understand, but I think Laravel is great. I think .NET is great. Elixir is awesome. I see what you did there. React is the only one that sucks. I love it. And I agree. Well, I don't know about Elixir. But I haven't actually developed in .NET. I'm not against it. The one thing I will say is, again, and this goes back to some of the tribalism, like this goes back more to my experience with certain developers. Before this job, my view of .NET developers is that they were lazy, because all of the developers that I met that were .NET developers were lazy and they didn't want to learn new things. They just wanted to stay in their little playground. And so that was my experience of .NET developers. So I've always been a little tribal against .NET, against Microsoft. I mean, we see that in the tech world as a whole. Android versus Apple, right? And I think both of them are fine. Like, I had a conversation with my in-laws years ago, and they were asking if they should buy an Apple computer because my mother-in-law had been gifted an iPad through work or something like that. And so they were asking, should we get an Apple computer? I said, honestly, unless you're wanting to live in that ecosystem, I probably wouldn't spend the money on it because it's not what they're used to. They weren't necessarily looking to do that, and so they didn't do it. And that's great for them. There's no reason to say that this is better, that's better, if there's no clear reason why they're better other than just my opinion and my experience, right? So that's why you hear a lot of caveats on this channel, because I want to try to not create tribalism. I want to just try to be truthful with my opinions, but recognize that they're just opinions along the way. So there's that. Dan says, I haven't worked in .NET professionally, but I've played with it enough to know that if I needed to, I'd be happy doing it. I say I haven't written a .NET. I have fixed a .NET application once, and thankfully it really wasn't .NET. It was a third party package. I think it was Google AdSense update that happened, and so I was able to mess with that code. I didn't really have to do anything other than recompile it or build it or whatever the correct terminology is. And so yeah, I have touched it, but I certainly have not done it. I could probably figure it out if I had to, but thankfully I don't. At least I don't have to so far. But yeah, and that's where again this pride comes in, where people start thinking that if you're not doing React with Next.js and a Node backend, everything they teach you in boot camp, then you're just dumb. Well, you know what? There's a lot of old technologies out there that need people to be able to work with them. I mean, there are financial institutions still running off of COBOL because, frankly, nothing else has been able to do as well as COBOL does for what they're doing. And so they need people that can still work with COBOL, and or they need people who can help build wrappers around COBOL or something like that. So um, we just need to be very careful whether we've gone through schooling, and I think that's that's another side where if you've been educated and gotten like a CS degree or something like that, it can be very easy to look down on other people. I've worked with developers who have CS degrees, and most of them have been very helpful and very kind, and actually taught me some things along the way that I didn't know about, with some lower level programming information that I would have never learned or desired to learn, but was helpful at the time. And so I've had good experience with them, but I think that's the important part, making sure that we're not trying to make ourselves look better or think less of others because they don't do something the same way we do, or because they don't have the same amount of experience that we have, or because they prefer a different technology stack than we do. All of these things are ways, and probably more, that we can tend to allow pride to sneak in. And if we're not careful, that will end up actually damaging our reputation. That will end up damaging our relationships at our employers, potentially even burning bridges with employers. So I just wanted to, thinking today, reflecting back on my 3 years here at the company that I work for, and then just my career in general. This concept of being grateful for the good things that have happened in my career, being grateful for the bad things that have happened in my career that have given me opportunities to learn and grow. Being willing to take some time and be grateful inwardly, to be grateful outwardly, whether that's posting something in a Slack channel or a DM, or giving somebody a text message or a phone call, or just simply, thinking back and being grateful for where you've been and where you are now. I think that really helps kind of reset our mindset, and in many ways resets the way that we then interact with other people. I didn't interview anybody, but I don't know if anybody at work felt like I was out of character today because I gave more kudos and thanks to other people than I have been recently. I think that should be something that should be more normative. And if it was more normative, then perhaps we would have a lot less struggles and infighting and issues within our organizations than a lot of organizations deal with. So anyway, that's really the only thing. I've still got my topic from Monday that we never got to. At some point, maybe next Monday we'll talk about it, or something else will come up between now and then. I did get my car home, for those who might be wondering. My car is sitting in my garage up on a jack because I hate car work. But basically, the drum took forever to come off. And then I got, there was 2 studs that needed to be replaced, so I took the studs took forever to come out too. And let's just say I was using a sledgehammer, which is probably not the best thing, but it's the only thing that was working. So got those out. The studs came out. One stud went in, but the way that it's set up, the other I can't get the other stud in. I'm gonna have to actually put the tire back on, rotate the wheel because it doesn't spin fully because it's 4-wheel drive. I think, I don't know. Probably would have helped if I put both wheels up. I don't know what I'm doing. But anyway, it's a long story and it's not done yet. So I will update you guys maybe Monday. Hopefully it'll be done. And I'll be back to having a vehicle that I can drive on the road safely. Theoretically, I could probably drive with 4 out of 5. So maybe I'll just be happy with that. But then I started taking the brakes apart, and drum brakes are a pain in the rear. So that's not completely put back together. So that's going to be my day tomorrow, probably after our live stream at 10 a.m. See what I did there? So hopefully you guys can join me tomorrow at 10 a.m. on the live stream. We're going to be looking back again at our project for the devmentordave.com. Very short deployment because it's not exactly what I do, but we're going to use it as an opportunity to go through that whole process. So join us then at 10 a.m. Central Time, and we will dive back into that project. I have some ideas of some things that I want to do with the WordPress backend, and we'll see how that goes. So thanks again for jumping on. Dan, for interacting here. Thanks, RAR Skills 2022, for jumping on board briefly and for the follow. If you do watch this live, or if you watch it later, I know they stay for a little bit on Twitch. If you watch this later on Twitch and you like what we're doing here, mostly just talking about life and development and the industry and all that fun stuff, if that is interesting to you, join the conversation. And if you're watching live, if you're watching later, give us a follow so that we can reach 10. Apparently that's something. I'll have to look that up and see what that is. So, but thank you to RAR Skills for jumping in there and helping us out with that, taking us up to 4 followers. So we got to get we got lots of followers over on YouTube, but they don't seem to want to jump over to Twitch. So, oh well, we'll figure it out eventually. Yeah, thank you, Dan, for the luck on the brakes. Yeah, hopefully we'll see you tomorrow at 10 o'clock. So I will sign off for now. We'll see you all tomorrow, and I'll try to get this uploaded here not too long on YouTube this evening. So I'll see you guys.